Welcome to Inner Voice of Knowing podcast. I'm Kay Doran, a shamanic leadership coach and healer, guiding you through life with a foot in both worlds. When you understand the terrain of the inner landscapes, the mental, emotional, spiritual and energetic, you will become the leader within your physical life, both personally and professionally. After all, the power of change is in your hands. Let's get this journey started. Welcome back to Inner Voice of Knowing. I've got a really lovely guest here for you today. We met in Sydney. We're both were there for a speaking event, and when we were walking as a group to go for dinner, David and I got talking, and by the end of the conversation, it's like, you need to come on my podcast. So let me introduce you to David Fisher, known as Fishy. Helps successful people recognise when achievements become a shield and presence has become a performance. And after 25 years shaping global brands as the Chief Strategy Officer, he realised he could define everyone else with precision, yet had lost clarity in himself. So from high-stakes strategy to world record aerobatic flying, one truth became undeniable. When pressure hits, you don't rise to the performance, you fall to what's real. And that's where his work begins. Welcome to Inner Voice of Knowing, Fishy, as you're fondly known.
Thank you. Lovely to be here, and I'm excited for our conversation today.
So where did this start? The realization that, you know, the old ways of performing and doing and being was not sustainable.
So I think that the honest truth is when I had a cancer diagnosis. So I had 6 months out of work with leukemia and chemotherapy for 6 months. And I had an incredible employer who gave me the grace to have time out of the business. And I got into probably the deepest. I've always been reflective and kind of interested in who I am and, you know, all the usual questions. Why am I here? What's my purpose? But 6 months out, what I realized was I had become defined by title. I was the Chief Strategy Officer. I was leading pitches, multi-million dollar, $100 million pieces of business. I was 7 days a week. I was the guy getting people to come in on Saturdays and Sundays and work their weekends and drive to, this is the most important win. We've got to win this. And
you were the driver. Yeah.
I was responsible for other people's lives going in the same direction as mine, which was driving towards achievements that we don't own. You know, no one's going to put on my gravestone, won this piece of business or lost that piece of business. It's really not that important. Yeah. But in the time you're caught up in it, I was caught up by title and role, and I'd become my role. I'd become completely defined by the title and the achievements and the accolades. And it was when I was laying literally in a hospital bed for multiple hours, you know, sometimes 6 hours a day. I was kind of, the question I asked myself is, who am I without my title? And it's a question I use with people now because it's...
That's what I call a power question. Yeah. When you ask a power question, it's so precise like that, Fishy. That's something deep in you, soul, whatever you want to call it, has to respond.
100%. Yeah. And that's what it was. And what I realized was that the person I was and the life I'd led that made me who I was not who I was. And so the person with the title was performing a version of themselves to be liked and loved and accepted and all those things. Yeah. And the kid at 15 who was standing on an airfield washing aeroplanes to learn to fly had completely got lost. And it wasn't about growing up and wanting to be young again. It was about realizing that there's a thread through my life, and there's things in my life that have been difficult to accept and bring into my whole self. Yeah. But all of that was being buried. It was being buried behind title. It was being buried by surface achievements, and even actually some of the achievements in my what sort of felt like a past life. So the world records that I'd done in my early advertising days when I was a hot air balloon pilot and a skydiver didn't feel like they fitted in the version.
Sorry, you've just thrown out 1, 2, 3 elements to who you are. This is what he did, everybody, in the conversation, and we'd be stopping at the lights to cross the road and I'm turning going, what else have you done? So let's take that back to, because you were talking about, you know, it's not that you were wanting to go back to being youthful or whatever, but who we are as we grow up until we feel like we have to grow up really does leave the history of who we really are Because
100%.
all these things are sort of tied in, really, aren't they? They're
Yeah.
adventuresome. There's freedom to them. Talk into that a little bit.
Yeah. So, and I think that's what I was sort of discovering was that I live on the fringe of things. I've become mainstream, but, I am an
Yeah.
adventurous person. I don't crave adrenaline, but I love pushing boundaries. So for me, skydiving, breaking records it was about the achievement. It was about bringing people together to do something that hadn't been done before, and working towards a really common but extreme goal.
Yeah.
And so there absolutely are threads, what I hold on to now, and it's becoming a theme, is that lived and learned experience together is really where we're powerful. When we stand in the conviction of not just I actually think our CV and the thing that we put on our LinkedIn profile of all the jobs we have is becoming less and less relevant every single day. And who we are as people, how we show up in the world, what we bring to the world because of the lived experience we've had in combination with the learned experience is actually where our power lives. And I mean power for good, as in what we bring to a conversation, what we bring to the world. And what I learned in that moment, I was 10 years ahead of where we are today, but
Yeah.
5 years ahead. What I learned in that moment was I'd buried the things that made me who I was to become something I thought everybody else needed me to be. And
Yeah.
when I let more of me out and more of who I really am, and the spirit of adventure, the curiosity, the exploration, the being uncomfortable and exploring that and helping other people go on those journeys, not accepting the world as it is around me, and actually finding the edges. Like I like going to edges, and that's
Yes.
what records and that's what aerobatics teaches.
Yes.
You can't win an aerobatic competition by being comfortable. The aeroplane performs at its very best in competition aerobatics at its very edge of flight. So unless you can go to the very point at which the aeroplane is just about to stop flying, you will not maximize its capability.
Oh, I've got chills washing all over me. What a great analogy. We're not meant to be robotic. I mean, the world now is, moving into robots and things, but it's like, we need all the flavors, all the colors, all the expressions of individuals. And I love that you're talking about lived experience and its value, because, sort of with my shamanic background, you look back at all the indigenous cultures and there were those that were living a connection to something else, and they became sort of wisdom keepers. And that used to once upon a time be really incredibly valued. And then we moved into go to university, get the certificates. How many certificates do you have on your wall? Speak like this, move like this, perform like this, sell like this. And I love that you're saying, that foot in those two worlds of lived experience and learned experience also via more traditional means. And I think it makes a well-rounded human being. And we actually want to feel the presence, an expression of Fishy, of Kay, of whoever.
100%. And presence is a really important word for me. And I talk
Yeah.
about agency, which is restoring control of that. That there are absolutely times for cultural, for personal safety reasons where we want to control how we show up. So this isn't about dyeing my hair bleach white, which I did for a while, and wearing a rainbow flag and going, I'm the gay guy and that's who I am. And if you don't accept it, well, screw you, because there's going to be commercial limitations to that.
Yeah.
So knowing when and how much of you should be present in a moment, and there's a piece of science called The Science of Selves, and when you dig into that, it's super confusing and complex, and I love it. But when we live from our core, when we understand who we are as a core person, and all of what I learned in those 6 months was all of the things I'd done from as far back as I can remember have shaped who I am. And
Yes.
knowing that they're there and having them as stories in my library makes them accessible. And agency is then about choosing, what stories do I tell on this podcast? What stories do I tell in the meeting tomorrow? What things do I allow out? And in a different situation, in a different culture, in a different commercial environment, I might adjust that. I will adjust that.
Yeah.
But that's me being in control. That's agency over how I show up, as opposed to where I was, which was completely automatic. I had buried that stuff away. I was unaccepting of certain parts of my life. I was unaware of certain stories. I'd closed them off. I can't be that person. I can't be the skydiving, frivolous dude with white hair jumping out of hot air balloons, breaking world records in this corporate environment. And that's complete and utter rubbish, but that's a story that I'd constructed for myself.
I have a saying that I've said for a very long time. We're just not, we're not merely in a life of business. We're actually in the business of life. And what you're speaking into now is exactly where that statement came from me and the power of it, because we try to also sort of separate them.
Yes.
Segregate them. And Fishy belongs here in his personal life, and then he belongs here in his professional. But really, I love that you're saying you learned that you needed to show up. Now, you might keep some sections aside because it may not land. And after all, we want to connect, don't we? But you're not hiding them.
It's all
You're
about
just
that.
choosing to say, this language, this story, this expression of me will build connection in this particular environment. And that's very different from sort of stay down, shut up, don't come out of the box,
100%.
When you were talking about the gay guy and the flag and, stuff you kind of element, I can relate to that at times. But do you feel like that actually happens when we've held back for so long? Suddenly we open the gates, and we just want to come rushing out. And there is that element that we almost require for a moment in time to anchor ourselves into the certainty of that freedom of expression of who we are. And then it all settles down.
100%.
Like the child that wants to come out and constantly put on a concert for its parents. That was me.
And I think the more we suppress parts of who we are, the more extreme our response becomes to that. So I kind of have this continuum that I've lived, which is fitting in and standing out. And the more we fit in, the more we suppress particularly strong parts of who we are and strong parts of our personality and strong parts of our core, the more likely is at some point there's going to be an outburst. There's going to be a breaking out. So I did dye my hair bleach white and turn up to work on Monday morning and freak everybody out. And it was kind of me going, look, I'm gay. And they went, yeah, we know, but your hair looks terrible. And so that was an extreme response of me hiding. I can't do this anymore. People
but
need
the
to
pressure
know.
builds, doesn't it? And bang,
And
the doors.
And it's an explosion rather than a controlled release. It's the journey of me becoming accepting of me in the world, but because I contained it for so long and then it explodes out. And so this journey of acceptance, of building stories, of understanding self allows us again to have that agency to go, no, I'm going to throttle this up, I'm going to throttle this back. And this environment feels okay, or I'm going to test this story in this environment. And as you know, on a stage, you're testing stories all the time. You're seeing how does that land with the audience. Oh, I went too far in that one. Okay, I'm going to reel that back. I haven't gone far enough. I've not released enough yet. And sometimes in the moment, and I did this a couple of weeks ago, you tell a story you didn't expect to tell because you're feeling in that connection with the audience. You're feeling like we're in this moment together right now, and a new story comes out that's not.
That's
planned.
connection, and that's, the buzzword flow, isn't it? Because you're being very present with the people that you're engaging with, the audience.
Yeah.
And I feel like when we have all too many structures, you can just deliver and you can deliver it and perform like how you are living. But in that moment, something magical happens because it is about the connection, about allowing that new story, whatever it might be, to just emerge and interact.
Yeah.
I
feels right.
was interviewing on Monday a beautiful woman, and she does keynote speaking, etc. as well. She put on a one-woman show, Good Girl Gone Rogue. It was incredible, right? Lots of messages and lots of stories, and she'd never done that before. Gave herself 6 weeks to prepare and came out and Fringe Festival and did it. And she said something really powerful that feels relevant for what you're sharing right now. And that is, she said, the way I prepare, Kay, is I don't jump up and down. I don't get rah-rah. I don't put the music on. I go calm. I go still. And I say, just back yourself. Back the decisions you've made. Back the choices. Back the actions. Just back yourself. And that takes away risk. It takes away, am I going to fail? Am I going to? And the reason I brought that up is because I feel like you were backing yourself and coming away from a particular script and just going, this needs to come out right now.
Yeah, it feels right in this moment. And I judge it on what do my going in position for me is the mindset is, what does this audience need from me? I'm here to serve this
Yeah.
audience. What is it I can bring to this audience that's going to be in service of them? So I'm not going
Yep.
on the stage to be amazing, to get the rapturous applause at the end. It's where are we at in that flow, and what do I feel now this moment calls for? And also judging that and going, you know what, this I've overstepped the moment, that I can dial that story back. This story is going to work better. And it comes from a library of stories. The more we build our library of stories of ourselves and what we're seeing around the world, the richer that archive. Like, I literally think about it like the book's behind me. Everything that's happened to us, every experience we've had is a little book in our library. But when we shut it away, when we close it off, when we don't spend time thinking about our past, we don't have a very good library. We don't have much to call on. And so in those moments where we're turning up, particularly in new situations or networking environments, then we create the persona, because we don't have the resources to show up as ourselves from our core self, because we've literally run out of books. We've turned up in an environment, the bookcase is empty. We're like, well, okay, what does the environment call of? What does the environment demand I become? And so we put on who we think we should be. And I have this phrase, which is, we feel fake fast. We're wired to feel when something isn't quite right. We can't always name it, but when we're interacting with someone and the words and the actions don't match, or there's something off with eye contact or the way that they're describing something, we can feel that. It's how we detect threats and how we figure out safe in the world. And when someone isn't being authentic with us, and I don't love the word authentic because of how it gets used, but
it gets bandied around a bit, but
it's become a catchphrase for too many things, and a switch that people think they've got to be authentic or not be authentic, but we can explore that. But we feel when something's off, and when someone isn't being true to themselves, we can
I was just going to say, let's use the word true. You know, that the true self, that deeper aspect of self, because I feel like we're always being authentic to who and how we are in that moment. Right? So whether it's anger or whether it's, you know, whatever it is, but that truest, deepest, our natural self. Do you feel like when people show up and they haven't got that library, as you say, which I think is a beautiful analogy, so they have to sort of read the room and, you know, adapt themselves, is that when they walk away and then they feel that depth of criticism?
Yeah, and the other way I think it shows up is exhaustion.
Yes.
So I'm tired of trying to be all these people. And interestingly for me, when you talked about sort of compartmentalizing us and how we interact, I'm an Aquarian, and Aquarians have the habit of putting people into buckets and not crossing the streams. And so that kind of amplifies well, you're my skydiving friends, and you're my work friends, and you're my sub-work friends, and this is how I show up for you and you. And it becomes exhausting, because you've got to try and remember, who was I last time I met this group of people? Who am I supposed to be? What does the environment ask of me? What's expected of me? What clothes should I wear in this world? I wear blue T-shirts and white T-shirts. They're made by a company called Mr. Simple, and it fits. Right? Keep it simple.
Love it.
Blue T-shirts, white T-shirts, occasionally a jacket. And it suits all occasions. I'm not worried then about, does the pink T-shirt work? Do I need the green?
Keep it simple.
Yeah, that's it. And then that's the brand, right? So and I'm not into personal branding. I have a massive issue with personal branding, because of what personal branding creates is fake personas.
Yeah.
Because we get caught up in the image and the projection, not the substance. I think for me, the signal is exhaustion. Like you walk out of somewhere and you feel like you weren't true to who you were. And this happens in meetings. So the other signal is a meeting where we hear something and we know we should say something, but we don't. Or we laugh awkwardly when we hear something because we're really uncomfortable about it, but we don't say anything. And that's because we're trying to fit into the environment. We're concerned, and this is where we get into the corporate world of psychological safety, but we're concerned about stepping out of what's accepted around here and calling out what we heard. And so there's that awkward laugh and the walk out of the room going, I know I should have said something and I didn't. Or in that moment, I could have been more of me and brought more of me to that moment, but I didn't. I censored myself.
But isn't this where we need the shift to, in those that are leading, giving others the permission to have a voice in the room, to have an opinion, to bring ideas. And it's, to me, it's the same. It's like whenever I have a fear, I'm not dragging it with me and I'm not pushing it under. I listen to it and then I go, you can get in the back seat. Thanks. I'm still driving.
Yeah.
But it quietens down because it was allowed. And, too often people feel afraid to come into those sorts of professional environments, or sometimes even within family and groups, friendships and, networking, whatever it might be. And we need to become more open in allowing different voices, different opinions for people to be seen and heard and felt.
Yep, 100%.
Doesn't mean you have to agree, doesn't mean you're going to run with that idea,
Right.
but let it land. I used to, because my husband, he always says to me, oh, you think with your heart, I think with my head, right? He's very logical, he's a historian, he loves all of that sort of stuff. So we move through things very differently, and we've come to understand we're saying the same thing, but in two different languages.
Yeah, nice. No.
But he would throw out ideas from his upper level management and stuff, and I find myself going to shut it down. And then I'm like, hold on a moment, let it land.
Yeah.
Because when it's settled, you might find the little speck of gold in it for you. But if you shut it off completely, one, it disconnects somebody, but you miss an opportunity. Yep. Might be a nugget. It might just be, like from school days, panning for gold back in Victoria, and there's a few specks. But I think we would all be more productive and grow in a more flourishing kind of way if we gave everybody that space to have their voice and be who they are.
100%. And that's kind of like also that holding conflict, right? When we hear something that we're not in agreement with, but just holding it, and just, that's where creativity, that's where innovation comes from. We don't break into new ways of thinking if we just all think the same. We become.
Sorry, Fishy, were you afraid when you started going through this change and then having to, come out about being the gay man, and then sort of bringing back these elements of ballooning? And let's go through a couple of those stories.
Yeah, I mean, the piece with this, I think, and one of the reasons I talk about agency is that there's always fear and concern and imposter syndrome. Am I being too much? Where does tall poppy syndrome? If I lead with records, am I being a little bit out there? And what's there? So I think of it as like the equalizer on a hi-fi system. You're always just looking at how the bars are going up and down, and if you're aware of that, and instead of going, this is me, I'm fixed, that's my personal brand, that's how I show up, well, that's not going to work because now that's too rigid, and the bars are always low because I'm always adjusting to the environment as opposed to adjusting how I am in that environment. And so I'm looking at that little equalizer and thinking about what to dial up, what to dial down, and I think it's about being aware of me in the world as opposed to the world determine how I show up in it. And so
that's powerful.
That flip of awareness to the world around me and me in that world. And I have a lot of resources available to me because of the books on the shelves that I've allowed onto those shelves and deliberately put on those shelves. Yeah. And some don't get called on very often, and some get called on a lot. But there's always, and then there's the reflection piece of, okay, yeah, was that the right story? Was that the right moment? Did that land? Was that too much? Was that culturally inappropriate? But that's healthy. For me, the way I call it noticing. Right? If we're conscious of how we're putting ourselves out in the world, so us in the world, we're noticing how the world's responding to that positively and negatively. Then we can adjust, and there's this, and that's where we're constantly adjusting, and doing it doing it deliberately and from a place of conviction. So this is who I am. I believe in who I am. I know I bring value to the world in these ways, and I'm prepared to stand behind that. So I know what I stand for. I know what I believe in. I know where my boundaries are and what my values and my beliefs are. And then I adjust within that. And it's a process, right? I'd love to say that, ask these 3 powerful questions, do this for 2 days, go on a yoga retreat, and you'll be on the other side of this.
Well, it's a continual deepening and expansive process as well.
It is. Yeah. And
I'm not the woman I was even a year ago, let alone 5, 10, 15. There's a core element that I am.
Yes.
But that willingness just to be deeper in who I am and more expansive and more expressionate. And of course, the life experience that also comes with each each lived extra day. Let's go back to that moment though for also where it lands, because I know exactly what you're talking about. But there might be listeners there going, well, okay, if I'm still doing a slight adaptation because this didn't land well or this did land well. What happens when it's something in the middle, Fishy, and it lands well for some and not for others? Then what do you do and about staying true to you?
I think that's a great question. I think I think about it around what and who matters to me.
Yeah.
So if it didn't land, did it not land because I didn't get validation? So I was seeking validation and I was putting that out in the world to feel liked. And do I need that? So did it land? Why did it not land in my mind? First of all, what's my qualification of landed or didn't landed? Did I get outright rejection? And then does that outright rejection matter to me? If I'm rejected by that group of people, are they my tribe?
Yes.
We are tribal people. We want to belong in tribes. We're constantly, one of the problems we have with belonging is we so deeply want to belong. We are so afraid of rejection that we'll do things to avoid rejection, which is why we hide who we are and want to be liked by everybody. So
Dominoes effect, isn't it? Yeah.
And so I'm qualifying going, okay, I put that post out there and I got lots of negative comments, but do I care about the negative comments because of where they came from? Or do I care about the negative comments because of what they're saying about my thinking? Or do I care about the negative comments because of actually I got this wrong and what they're pointing to is that I missed the mark? That they're very different things and my response to that is very different. As opposed to just going, I put myself out there, people didn't like it, that's rejection, I'm not going to do that again. And so challenging the automatic, we have so many automatic responses that we just don't notice. And so noticing that, okay, that didn't land the way I thought, but is that a problem or is that just a signal that I'm actually starting to experiment more and that's what that's going to feel like? And I'm okay with that in this situation, but in that situation or with this group of people, I'm not okay with that because belonging in this group of people is way more important to me than belonging in that group of people, or holding this position really matters to me and I'm okay with people not being okay with that. And I'm okay softening this position because I wasn't that strong on it. And what I've learned is that there are other points of view that I should consider. So this adaptability, I think, is the key to it. When I get rigid in this is my point of view, this is how it all starts to get like we become like a box. We've got hard sides to us as opposed to a diamond where we've kind of like as you rotate it, the light shines through, and it's just a lovely way of thinking about how light reflects off of us, and as you rotate around it, it changes, as opposed to a box with hard sides and really like hard to fit into things and very rigid in the way it shows up. So I try and use visual. I'm a very visual metaphor person, so I try. I love it. Yeah, see how things fit and appear in my mind, and then try and use that to describe what I'm seeing and feeling and thinking.
What I love, Fishy, is, and it's great because some people will hear the words and the description. Some people can suddenly get a visual, and it means that it lands in many different ways. But what I feel like I'm hearing you say is, or what I'm observing is, you get curious, right? So rather than just one blanket reactiveness, you get curious in the depth of the questions that you ask and what way can I look at this and that self-questioning. And I think being curious and inquisitive is really important in getting to know what's really important to us and for us and in who we are. And I did a post the other day, and there's this one person on Facebook who has had an awakening experience and thinks, that's it, I know everything other people don't. And he did a response that was just basically like, not really. So didn't participate, didn't elaborate, didn't. And I sat there and I'm like, what do I do with this? What am I going to do with this? And then I really just came to with some I'm just going to leave that there. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to respond. I'm not going to delete. I'm not going to engage. Yeah. I went back, looked through his profile again and just sort of did a check-in and went, this will never be a productive conversation. Yeah. Because I love conversation. My dad used to think that I was, in an argument with my siblings. I was one of 5, and he'd put a stop to it, and I'd be like, "No, we're just debating, Dad." It's, do you know what I mean? Like, I just love that backwards and forwards. It wasn't so much an "I'm right, you're wrong, shut up" kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I think that's important too. There are going to be people that we can engage with, that we can communicate with, that we can learn to question and see each other's perspectives, and, intention is everything. But there are just some moments that we need to do a bit of that journey, like what you're talking about, and go within and ask ourselves these deeper questions. And the answer comes quite clearly. It was so clear for me, like, just do nothing. This is not going to ever go anywhere. It's not going to be a productive communication. Just leave it. Leave it on the table, so to speak.
It's the angry email that you come back to the next morning, that little bit of distance. It's almost, and I guess, again, sort of visually how I think about it is taking that step back, like, observing the moment and going, okay, objectively, if I look at this, what was that about? What was my response? What did I feel? What was my response to that? Was it, I felt a feeling of not receiving the validation I was looking for, or why was I looking for validation? And just going on that. I think it is how my brain works. I'm a strategist by trade. So I'm inquisitive. I need to understand how things work. That's what my brain is wired to want to do. So I'm naturally inquisitive, to want to follow steps and keep asking the why question. But I think it is part of the process. I think it is that observing, step back, and the further back you get. So my analogy for this is the helicopter. So most of the time we're just running through the corn, and when you're running through the corn, you can't see anything but corn. I love the perspective of a helicopter, because it just puts you high enough above the corn to see what's going on. And stepping back from the post, stepping back from the, I've just walked out of that meeting, this is the anger I'm feeling, or this is the resentment I'm feeling, or this is the rejection I'm feeling, and then getting in the helicopter and going, well, look at that in the bigger picture of, are you running around in a circle in a cornfield and you just can't see it? Like, what's going on when you step back from that and just get above it a little bit and just have a look from a perspective of attachment and distance.
Perspective over perception. The perception of those tainted lenses that we wear. I've got a different analogy, but it's the same thing. And we do. The view just takes in more, doesn't it? So the work that you do now, how has that changed from before that cancer came and gifted you this insight?
It's a lot more human. And it's blended. So what I've realized is the work, my background is marketing, advertising, strategy, which is really about how companies show up. And what it teaches us is it's taught me, and my work in that is a lot around understanding consumers, how we build trust, how we build connections, through a commercial lens. So I still do work in the commercial space, and I do a lot of work with sales teams around building commercial connections. But it's the human part of that I do the work on. And then the human connection is the human work. The first piece of work was on myself. So you can't do something for someone else until you've proven it works on yourself.
Don't give it lip service.
Yeah, I'm always the first tester of the product, if you like. And it was that was the realization, was that for 20 odd years I've been making brands famous, helping them show up in the world, and I wasn't doing it for myself. I was doing the very opposite of what I've been, doing for major brands, building connections, building trust. I was eroding trust by hiding parts of who I was. I was eroding trust by not showing up with presence. And so what's happened in my work is getting deeper and deeper and deeper into the human connection piece. And like all of these things, there's a timing piece to this. There's a piece for me. So that's the journey I'm on. And it's the journey the world's on. We're people doing business with people. And we will continue to be that for, I think, as long as I'm on this planet. And so we're going to be in an augmented world. We are going to have agents and org charts. We're going to have technology supporting us. We're going to have technology leading us in certain instances. But we're still people doing business with people. We still need to show up for teams. We still need to show up in teams. We still need to be present, navigate change, be curious, drive innovation. That comes from us and our human skills. And so I think we're in this really interesting place where my sort of move into that is at the same time as the world needs it more, and that's where my speaking is centered. We've never had the ability to be more connected, and yet we've never been more disconnected. And it's on us as a group of people to work on that.
Isn't that the truth? Are you still flying? Are you still ballooning?
I don't fly balloons or skydive, but I do still have a commercial hot air balloon license, and I technically have a skydiving license, but I still fly aeroplanes. So I've kind of gone full circle. I started in aeroplanes when I was 15, got my aeroplane license before my driving license, then got my hot air balloon license, then skydiving, and then I've gone back to aeroplanes.
Yeah. If you were to have a conversation with your 80-year-old, what do you think the 80-year-old would be saying to you in where you are in life right now?
I think there'd be a little bit of, well, wouldn't it have been great if you could have got this sooner? So there's probably 10 years of my life where there was too much performance and not enough integration of where I am now. And then I'd love to look back at that, the period from now to 80 through the lens of impact. So what did that change?
Nice.
And that's the piece I guess I'm most excited. Like when you would feel this when you do work and you see the change in people and people come back to you. And I had this conversation with somebody yesterday from a keynote, and they just said, I've never showed up the way I'm showing up now before, and I've never had such a positive reception to who I am in the world today. And you take things like that and you're like, well, that's why this matters. And so I think, yeah, there'd be a little bit of, you could have got there sooner, and a reflection on hopefully the power of the message reaching more people.
Wow. I love the gold that you just spoke about then with that person that came back and being more true to themselves. They've never been more well received.
Yeah.
That is.
Yeah. They're building
that is the truth of it.
They're on YouTube. They've never been out publicly as themselves. They've always hidden behind the company brand, and they've got 20,000 followers on YouTube in like under 2 months because of who they are, because of them showing up without polish, without all the fancy lights and subtitles and tactics that we're taught that we need to do to create professional video. They're just being them.
I think that's the thing. There's so much noise out there. I was getting bombarded. I do get bombarded, and I just tend to now either don't respond or go, no, thank you. Yeah. No, thank you, no, thank you, no, thank you. Because for me, from my shamanic perspective, the most important thing is that I am energy first. Science now backs that. So I need to be fully aligned in the authenticity of the deepest expression of K and that openness. And that is the best advertising I could do, for a lack of, that's not the right word. Do you know what I mean? But the more that I try to build too many pathways, I lose that essence. You know, and we were talking about brand earlier, and, you know, I was rebranded last year and I absolutely loved it because this person I had worked with for a long time and had gotten to really know me and had the ability to see more of me, like I do in people that come to me. I see more of them than they're in themselves right now. You would do the same. And, you know, the red suit and the bare feet and the drum and the natural elements is not a performative K, that is K. Do you know what I mean? It just represents all these expressions of me. And when you meet me in business, or when you meet me personally, it's the same woman that you're meeting.
Isn't that wonderful though? Isn't that
wonderful? It's so freeing.
Shouldn't that be the goal? Like when I read a LinkedIn post and I meet someone, the voice is the same. When I see someone online and I meet them in person, I'm like, this matches.
Yes. Yeah. And the imagery of whether it's the white T-shirt or the navy T-shirt, or for me, the red, it just creates that vibe where they also, when they do meet you and they go, I just feel really familiar with you. That's different from the old school of branding.
100%.
Which is sort of that more performative and present something, and then you meet the person and you're sort of like, who are you? Mm-hmm. You know, I met some people once and I didn't realize I wasn't across it at the age I am. I'm still catching up on all the ability to change their faces and do all
Yeah.
the, like face apps and things. And when I said to my husband, I feel like the old gal going to show up with these two young ones and create some stuff with them. And I walked up and I had to blink a couple of times because I realised they had so altered their faces as part of their show up in social media in their branding that suddenly they looked quite, what's the word? They were still incredibly beautiful women,
Yeah.
but they looked their ages. I just had to do a double take. And then I realised, of course, that this is what people are doing. They're using more than just a bit of a brush up.
Yeah.
They're altering how they look.
Yeah.
And I think that's a little bit sad that we can enhance, but that's another performative thing.
100%. And actually, if you look at the globally, and this is true of brands as well, so iconic brands are the brands that have substance and show up consistently. And the influencers in the world that have the greatest sustained following are the ones who show up authentically. They might have production values, they might have a video team because that's their business. Yeah. But if you met them in the street walking through New York, it wouldn't look any different to them being on a video walking through New York. And that's, for me, that's the goal. That is the online persona should match the person, as opposed to be a persona that is, this is it, unless you're. Someone said to me the other day, "Is it ever okay to have an online persona?" I said, "Yeah, it's okay if you're never going to be in the real world. If your intention is only ever to be an online persona, and quite frankly, right now, you might as well make that out of AI because it will be less effort. If you're never going to appear in the real world, in a meeting, shake hands with somebody, turn up at networking, have drinks, go to a party, go on a stage, whatever it is, if you're never going out, then create an avatar.
And if you want to build trust with people that you're eventually going to meet in a room, they're not going to trust. If there's one thing that's just being presented one way and you're nothing like that
100%.
When you show up, they're not buying what you've got because they're not buying who you are.
No, that's right.
Yeah.
And now we're doing business. The human connection and our ability to feel that connection and feel trusted within that, and trust requires presence, is becoming more and more critical. Trust is eroding, disconnection is becoming a problem. And it's on us now, particularly as leaders in businesses, it's on us to start to reverse that.
And lead by example. And you're so right with that person coming to you, and they're not, camera positions may not be right. You might not have the right background. I started doing Facebook Lives years ago, and then I joined a group for some years with Girl Director Academy that taught me what height to have the camera or what background and things like that. But they were also, just get on there and give it a go.
Yeah.
If you're afraid. So I got to sort of learn some things and go, but I never looked back at Kay who just got on there and gave it a go and judged her. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? I sort of went, so if the camera's looking up at me, I'm looking down at them. Okay, I get that. Or, working out places in my home where, because I've got artwork and stuff everywhere, I'm so eclectic, and it's like, that's too busy. And in the end, I'm like, you know what? I'm just picking a spot and doing it. Yeah. And my husband will say to me, because he watches some really amazing podcasts and stuff on YouTube, and he goes, what's their background like? And I'm like, shit, but what a really good podcast. You know what I mean?
That's the content.
People at the end of the day care about who you are and the way you're showing up and the way you make them feel.
Hope so.
And I so want to thank you, Fishy, because I can say authentically, you have shown up in the same way that, when we're walking out to dinner and you were chatting to me and how you're being and sharing your wisdom in the way that comes out in your language that will land for so many people. And the podcast is called In a Voice of Knowing. So I always like to finish and ask by saying, do you feel that you have an inner voice of knowing? And if you do, how has it served you?
So yes, is the quick answer. It's served me when I've listened to it. And so I think it's always there. But because the external, the triggers is the wrong word, the external factors of validation, of fitting in, of everything we talked about earlier, of the what's expected.
Yeah.
Creates it's kind of like the good voice on the left shoulder and the bad voice on the right shoulder. The inner voice of knowing is there, but what hasn't always been there is the trust in the voice. And so maybe it's been quiet, maybe I haven't trusted it, and now what I know is to know when to know, and know when what I know is wrong.
Yeah. Would that be your final message for our listeners?
I think it's a good place to end.
It is a good place to end. If people want to inquire about working with you, we will have the details, whatever links you want to send me, we will put them on the bottom of the podcast.
Amazing.
You do personal coaching as well as...
Yes, I work with individuals, teams, and individuals within teams. So mix of different modes of working for sure.
And if anyone here is listening and wants an amazing keynote speaker who's deeply authentic, we will have, again, all those links and all those details. Thank you so much, Fishy, for coming on and being so open and so real with our listeners.
It's genuinely been an absolute pleasure. I've loved our conversation. I love these conversations. What better is there to have a conversation where you can just show up and have a conversation?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Join me on my next episode. And if you love this podcast, please subscribe by clicking on the plus button if you're on Apple, or like and follow on Spotify. Rate and review. And please share Inner Voice of Knowing with your friends.